classes available via Zoom, so we'll share those instructions for those who may be needing it before we get started.
欢迎大家参加亲爱教育基金会主办的第66届联合国妇女大会的平行会议。我们今天将提供同声传译的服务，请大家在 Zoom 的页面上的右下方，如果您有看到一个语言频道，请您选择中文。如果您选择中文频道，您将会以全程以中文同声传译收听此次的会议。谢谢。如果有任何的问题，请在这个chat 当中给我留言，谢谢。Thank you. Over to Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. On behalf of the Beijing Change Your Education Foundation, I am so excited to welcome you to tonight's discussion on building financial strength for under-resourced women and youth. My name is Caroline Haynes, and I'll be the MC for this evening. Tonight, you'll hear from 4 incredible women, their suggestions and solutions for promoting gender equality, economic empowerment, and justice for women worldwide. This parallel event to the UN's 66th Commission on the Status of Women wouldn't be possible without Beijing Change Your Education Foundation, formerly known as AIDS Prevention and Education Project for Chinese Youth. It's dedicated to providing sex education for adolescents, as well as supporting those impacted by the AIDS epidemic. Since 2006, they've built 1,300 love cottages, or drop-in centers, in schools across 80 regions in China, benefiting 30 million teachers, students, and parents. Their work has been globally recognized by world leaders and international organizations alike, and in 2019, Beijing Change Your Education Foundation received special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council. We've prepared a brief video to showcase the work Change Your does, which we'll play for you now.
Ending AIDS and protecting youth are the shared responsibility of all humanity. Beijing Change Your Education Foundation is the most influential organization in the field of anti-AIDS in developing countries. We gathered tens of thousands of caring people who provide a long-term commitment to AIDS prevention, education, and public welfare undertakings for women and children. We have developed the social vaccine for sex education against AIDS and reach 1 billion people. In addition, we have widely implemented aid and assistance to help tens of thousands of people who are affected by AIDS. As an organization with special consultative status with United Nations Economic and Social Council, we actively exercise our rights and obligations with UN agencies, provide donations to foreign developing countries, collaborate with international organizations, and participate in international conferences. We also advocate the protection of the rights and interests of women and children in the world. We contribute our years of experiences, wisdom, and strength to help achieve the UN ending AIDS by the year 2030.
So let's welcome back Emma Chen Benas, UN Representative and Chief Administrative Officer of Beijing Change Your Education Foundation. She's going to dive into Change Your's mission to seek more international partnerships. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Caroline. Good evening or good morning, everyone. I'm taking a few minutes today to call for opportunities for international partnership with NGOs on behalf of Change Your Education Foundation. Next slide. China Youth AIDS Education Project was founded in 2006. In 2014, Beijing Change Your Education Foundation was founded. Change Your Education Foundation promotes AIDS prevention and treatments, sexual health, mental health, public charity, and traditional culture education. In addition, through the establishment of Love Cottage or drop-in center in schools, Changjie provides teacher training, parenting classes, publication of teaching aids, curriculums development, research, and support for students in need, and also to tens of millions of teachers, students, and parents. Changjie developed the youth sexual education and prevention model, which well recognized nationally and globally. In 2016, Michelle Sidibe, Undersecretary and General of United Nations and the Executive Director of UNAIDS, affirmed that the experience and the practice of Changjie in providing HIV prevention and sex education in schools is worth of being replicated around the world. Next slide. Changjie's journey has been the same as the most NGOs, starting from a single idea and then developing step by step with great difficulties. As founder mentioned, she saw the suffering and the helplessness of people with AIDS, which led to the idea of founding the China Youth AIDS Center. From the beginning from one person to tens of millions of participants and beneficiaries nationwide now. How do we do it? What is our success secret sauce? First, persistence is fundamental. Our persistence has helped many AIDS patients and their families, engaged many participants, and recruited many volunteers and generous donors. Because of our persistence, we have received national support and the recognition from the United Nations. Second, we have worked tirelessly to promote changes in perception and awareness from the individual to the governmental level. AIDS and sex education has been relatively concealed topic in many countries. Because we stand by our beliefs, we have tried and found ways to change traditional perceptions effectively, and also found ways to promote changes into governmental policies and also creation of the new legislations. Third, we have gained the support from influential members of the community. Because of many famous people in society recognize the mission of the Changjie, they are willing to use their influence to help to drive the changes and gain support through their supporters. Fourth, always keep the original intention. Then, whenever we encounter difficulties or setbacks, we know why we are here and whom we serve. To save the lives of many helpless AIDS patients and their families, which is our duty. Next slide. Changjie call for giving back to the community. Changjie, in the early stage of our organization and its growth, has received help from different parties. Now our organization has grown and is strong. We have expanded from fighting AIDS to focusing on women, youth, and children's rights and financial empowerment. We have also grown from the regional to the national level to the United Nations. We are now encouraging international NGOs to partner with us. We are ready. First, we are ready to provide our years of experiences, best practices, and the financial assistance to the organizations that need help in the fight against AIDS. For example, in developing countries, in Africa, Asia, and worldwide. Please get in touch with us if your organization needs help and support. Second, we are now also seeking partnership and collaborations with NGOs who shares the same vision of supporting women, youth, and children's rights, and the UN's sustainability goals. Don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Let's share our experiences and the resources. Next slide. Below is the contact information for Challenger. I'm looking forward to working together to build a better future with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. So without further ado, let's jump right into the content that we've prepared. I'd like to introduce you to my sister and our first guest speaker, Pendry Haynes. Pendry has spent the last decade as a volunteer and a board member for a variety of organizations ranging from healthcare to education. She serves on the Boston Community Board of Trustees for the Jeremiah Program, and we'll hear more about her involvement in this organization this evening. Pendry currently lives and works in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and is a financial manager at Harvard University Campus Services. Over to you, P.
Thanks, Caroline. If this problem had one solution, we would have found it by now. Everyone here knows it has multiple causes, layers, and systemic barriers to change. Therefore, the solutions must be dynamic and interwoven. But one thing I'm guessing many of us agree on is that education is an essential component to realizing economic empowerment. I'm sure we've all also seen that education alone isn't a magic wand. It's only the first step. If you can enhance educational resources with additional investments, you can empower women to chart their own course. Tonight, I will share my story about working in an organization with a unique approach to helping under-resourced women build financial strength for their families and share my observations on best practices we can all apply to this shared goal. The Jeremiah Program is a two-generation strategy to combat poverty. This sets them apart in that they focus on the needs of both the parent and child. Founded in 1993, Jeremiah Program is headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with campuses in 7 US cities, including Boston, Massachusetts, where I serve on the Community Board of Trustees. Their mission is to empower single mothers who are working toward a college degree and prepare their children to succeed in school. When a mother invests simultaneously in her personal and professional goals and the education of her children, she can re-author her family's outcomes and act as a change agent within her community. The path from poverty must include the whole family, and no mother should have to make the untenable choice between investing in herself or supporting her children. Jeremiah Program provides 5 core pillars of support to families. But what increases the impact of these services is the added layer of personalized coaching, which forms a holistic 2-generational model. The first is university access and career support. Moms meet with a family coach who works with them to set educational goals and choose a career path. Higher education is meant to be academically challenging, but under-resourced women benefit from the extra support and encouragement navigating the brand new processes of registering for classes, finding internships, etc. Second is quality early child education. This is provided on-site at Jeremiah Program's 5 residential campuses in Austin, Texas, Fargo, North Dakota, and Minneapolis, Rochester, and St. Paul, Minnesota. In the other 2 non-residential campuses in Boston, Massachusetts, and Brooklyn, New York, Jeremiah Program connects families to quality early childhood programs in their communities and helps with necessary interventions for all school-age children. Jeremiah Program coaches support moms to become advocates and partners in their children's educational experiences. For example, a coach will work with a mom on how to best approach her child's school to request an individual education plan or other resources. Third is safe and affordable housing. Jeremiah Program offers single mothers and their children housing in 5 residential campuses. These families pay no more than 30% of their income for rent. In the off-campus models in Boston and Brooklyn, Jeremiah Program works with community partners to ensure that each family has safe housing in place. Fourth is empowerment, leadership, and career coaching. Based on the premise that these moms are the experts of their lives and their families, empowerment training is a 3-month course that is an admissions requirement for the program. Empowerment moves moms from gratitude to agency, providing permission for them to repurpose their power, resiliency, and tenacity in service of their families and communities. Once enrolled in the program, mothers regularly participate in workshops for career exploration, financial literacy, positive parenting, healthy living, and more. And the fifth is supportive community. This begins with the JP Sisterhood. By taking this journey together, women normalize, recognize, and get comfortable with their power, agency, and resiliency, things that have often been missing from their personal narratives. Coaches work one-on-one with moms, offering support and advice to realizing their vision for themselves and their families. I was introduced to Jeremiah program in the late spring of 2017 when a women's community service and training organization I had been a part of for years, the Junior League, needed someone to create a relationship between the two organizations in which league members would volunteer at Jeremiah program. The first thing I did was request a meeting with Jeremiah's executive director because I wanted to be certain my volunteers were providing resources the organization actually wanted. When I arrived at Jeremiah's headquarters, my first impression was one of chaos. Jeremiah had only recently established the site in Boston and had rented a home in desperate need of restoration in the city's historically African-American neighborhood for its office and meeting space. The walkway was crumbling and the walls were cracked, but I could see it had once been a grand old home. What the facility lacked in aesthetics was definitely made up for in its energy. Moms were doing homework and meeting with their coaches, while the children ran about playing with each other, avoiding their own homework. I could see the character and personality of the organization right away. When I tracked down the executive director, she gave me the overview of the program, and not just the facts that they provided X, Y, and Z services, but the why behind it and how it impacted the moms. As an educated and privileged young woman without children of my own, she explained it to me like this. University was always the expectation for me. I had family who charted that path from day one and peers on the same track. While I was in school, I learned how to network. I was taught to leverage classmates and alumni to find a job, make social connections, and so on. At my prestigious liberal arts college, I was encouraged to explore and experiment, to get summer internships in different fields, talk with recent graduates about what the day-to-day in a specific industry is like. I had every option and support available to me. Without that privilege, there are fewer paths to take and the gates are harder to open. Who will encourage you to pursue an advanced degree if no one in your family has one? How will you know what career options are available if you only encounter people in a narrow set of fields? Where will you find emotional support when the responsibilities of financially supporting your family, raising your children, and pursuing your own dreams become too much? Jeremiah program was created to fill that gap and help the moms unlock these doors. The next thing that the director said to me was that it's not a coincidence that the people in need of this program were women, poor, and mostly non-white. The systemic forces of gender, class, and race played a role in the program participants' life stories. When she told me that, I realized this organization was serious about truly solving these problems. It wasn't just a feel-good project that's making certain symptoms marginally better in the short term. Generational poverty is a social justice issue, not an economic one. While education isn't a magical fix, it's a solid first step to economic mobility, which allows more equitable access to opportunity. Furthermore, Jeremiah program knows that single moms experiencing poverty are, in fact, great moms. The goal is to disrupt entrenched stigmas about single mothers with new narratives. It does this by centering the voices and experiences of single moms, allowing them to build power. By changing the narrator, we change the narrative. Now these women are doing the talking instead of being talked about. Fast forward 4 years, and Jeremiah is currently creating a policy arm which will use moms' voices and experiences to influence legislation in its 7 cities and nationwide. If the world stops telling under-resourced women what to do and starts asking them what they want, we can move towards gender equity. As I listened to the director and watched all the activity in the building, I thought about my own single mother. Even with every material and social advantage, I saw how hard it was for her to do everything on her own. And she already had earned her degree long before I was born. She didn't have to sacrifice her own studies to help me with my homework or choose between preparing for an exam and taking an overtime shift. Now that I'm an adult, I understand it was the weight of all-consuming responsibility without anyone to share the emotional burden or to affirm she was doing a fabulous job with her 2 little girls that was the most difficult. So even though I couldn't completely understand the Jeremiah moms' lives, a small piece of my own history told me this mission was worth buying into. When our meeting came to a close, the director and I decided that my volunteers would tutor the moms, which would not only provide support in their coursework, but would hopefully evolve into writing resumes, interview prep, and other career readiness activities. I was paired with a woman about my age who had 2 young children. She had started university before, but the financial toll and lack of support from her children's father forced her to drop out. Now she was trying again because her career advancement was limited without a degree. It was immediately apparent she did not need my help with her studies. She would send me her papers to review, and the most value I could add was pointing out where she missed a comma. But the more I got to know her, I realized she and I had many similarities, except that I grew up with every advantage, while gender, class, and race shaped her family's circumstances. She felt deeply lonely as a child with low self-esteem and no supportive adults to encourage her love of books. She then fell into an unhealthy romantic relationship, which further exacerbated these feelings. Through the Jeremiah program's empowerment classes, coaching sessions, and peer support, she learned to stand on her own, love herself, and choose happiness. She has now earned her bachelor's degree and has a great new job with opportunity for growth. So not only did she improve her immediate economic reality, but her children, who watched their mother empower herself to make big changes, are also now better positioned to fully break the cycle of generational poverty. This is how I've seen one organization help under-resourced women build financial strength by focusing on education compounded by additional services. Some of the tactics and best practices I would like to share tonight are: provide supports along with your material resources. Many governments and organizations provide physical necessities, but sometimes that's not enough to create true equity. For example, a scholarship can only be so helpful if the student isn't set up for success otherwise. The key to Jeremiah program's achievement is not just helping moms finish school, but empowering them to change their family's future. Celebrate your gender equity, economic empowerment, and justice agenda. These concepts are at the forefront of conversations right now because of the global pandemic and racial reckoning in the United States in a way that feels different than it did even 3 years ago. Jeremiah program has been loud and proud about its goals, which has attracted many stakeholders, including myself. Collaborate with like-minded organizations. One group can't do or provide everything on its own. Jeremiah program works with the Junior League to find volunteers and multiple housing agencies and NGOs in the Boston area to help moms procure stable housing. Develop an economy of scale. How can you leverage your resources to make a deeper and/or wider impact? Jeremiah program can assist families in 7 different cities by replicating a curriculum using the same overhead tools. In other words, one finance team, one website, etc., serves all the sites. Show your character. How do people know who you are as an organization? The chaos of Jeremiah Boston says a lot. We are a little loud and don't have all the resources we need, but everyone is welcome and we do a lot with what we have. This authenticity helps attract and retain people who see value in the mission. Tell a story. Something there will help you relate to someone who can help. Jeremiah program resonated with me because I was raised by a single mom. For others, it's the social justice lens that grabs their attention. You never know who is listening and what they can contribute. In fact, Jeremiah program's annual fundraiser, titled Voices Rising, encourages the moms and other prominent Bostonians to share their personal stories on stage. Some are funny, some are heartbreaking, but they all make an impact on the audience. Take both a micro and macro approach. We can address the problems of today, but what about tomorrow? Jeremiah program helps families with immediate essential needs such as housing resources and public transit passes, in addition to its work to influence local policy on education and childcare, which will benefit all families in the future. And finally, describe your mission as investing in women versus helping them. Yes, Jeremiah program helps families by providing affordable housing and other tangible goods, but this is always framed as an investment which will generate the return of a successful future for these families. Education isn't the only path to gender equality, economic empowerment, and justice, but combined with other supports, both material and emotional, it can have a transformational impact on a family's financial strength. By encouraging under-resourced women to achieve their own goals instead of opposing rules or simply giving handouts, we can move towards gender equity. The disparities between women living in poverty and their more affluent peers can only be dismantled by an aggressive investment in women closest to the challenges we are trying to solve. One mom, who is a JP alumna from Minneapolis, put it this way: "We set the precedent for generations to come, and it shows the world how to treat us, so that one day putting ourselves and our wellness first becomes natural and not viewed as a luxury." Thank you.
Thank you, Pendry. I really like what you said about shifting the narrative from helping women to investing in women and their future, and certainly investing in the ability for young single mothers to complete their education is the first step to empowering them to achieve their goals. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Yunjung Choi. You'll never believe Yunjung is only 17 years old, given all that she's accomplished in her life thus far. A student at Hong Kong International School and self-driven entrepreneur, she is passionate about advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals and launched a project called For Girls to help alleviate period poverty and reduce inequality. Now, I'll pass it over to Yunjung to share her talk, "From the Bathroom to the Boardroom, Meeting Basic Needs as a Mechanism for Financial Security."
Thank you, Caroline. We've gone to the moon, brought the internet to life, developed life-changing medicines and technologies, and yet we have failed girls and women all around the world. There's a problem you may have not heard about, yet it's affecting millions of young girls' education and women's opportunities to work every day. This is period poverty, and it is far more common than many people know. In fact, it's the reality for an estimated 500 million women and girls worldwide. Period poverty is about menstrual inequity. It's about a combination of inadequate access to safe menstrual products and the lack of clean water and sanitation, combined with economic disparities that directly impact girls and women. Menstrual inequities have real-world consequences beyond the stigma that can impact one's ability to continue education, pursue work, and provide for their family. This is a global humanitarian and economic crisis where girls and women are denied opportunities because of their lack of ability to financially manage their periods. 1 in 4 women will experience period poverty in her lifetime. Let's take a moment to process this number. 1 out of 4 women. We are in the year 2022 and are still talking about period poverty. To provide a brief introduction, period poverty has always been a huge problem, but the pandemic has worsened the situation for many girls and women. For many young girls and women living below the poverty line, menstrual products are beyond their purchasing power. However, it doesn't just end here. More than half the schools in low-income countries either lack sufficient toilets for girls or are frequently not very clean. With the inadequate availability of clean water and hygiene in many schools, girls are forced to miss out on their education, and this further creates an unfriendly school environment for them. The challenges posed by poor hygiene management will continue to jeopardize the potential of girls and the realization of many United Nations Millennium Development Goals if they are not properly addressed. According to the World Bank, girls could miss up to 4 consecutive days of school every month because of their periods, meaning that they could potentially miss 10 to 20% of time over the course of their schooling. Education of girls is one of the most effective tools for women's empowerment, but period poverty continues to keep girls out of school. Too often, girls must choose between an education they need and deserve, staying home and missing class, or going to school using horrific alternatives like newspapers or old dirty rags. This means that girls are missing out, particularly when they live in rural areas and in poor households. The consequences of this are huge. According to the United Nations, as many as 20 million girls drop out of school worldwide every year due to a lack of adequate menstrual hygiene products. When I miss a few days of school, I already have trouble keeping up with the other students, so I can only imagine how these girls feel. I'm fortunate enough to not have to worry about this. But for many girls around the world, this is an ongoing issue. Girls who continue their education to the secondary level are better equipped to make informed choices about their lives. Studies have shown that one key area where increased investments and attention could have a significant impact on the lives of women and girls and future generations is keeping girls in school to complete a quality secondary education. Thus, investments need to focus on those areas which have proven to have a definite impact on poverty and development of girls' education. This means girls can go to school even when they're menstruating. Women with even a few years of primary education have better economic prospects, healthier children, and are more likely to ensure that their own children go to school. However, when we deprive young girls of the necessary hygiene and supplies to manage menstruation, we are robbing them of their education, which actively reduces economic empowerment. Missed school days can be seen as missed job opportunities. To me, the path to financial strength starts with understanding and having access to basic needs. You cannot be financially independent or successful if your basic needs are not taken care of. In Hong Kong, I hide menstrual supplies when going to the public bathroom. If this is the level of stigma and taboo in Hong Kong, I can only imagine how much greater the taboo is in other countries. For many young girls and women, the time of the month when they're menstruating is also the time of increased struggles, embarrassment, and shame. And this shame just doesn't end here. This shame ultimately affects not just those who menstruate, but our entire economy and development of countries. After reading an article about how period poverty affects girls my age and the serious consequences of this global problem, such as the increased likelihood of child marriage and future poverty, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was honestly shocked because I never imagined that so many girls are affected by this issue. This issue spoke to my heart, and it didn't sit right with me that a natural bodily function would hold girls and women back. When I started to think about how I could raise funds in a sustainable way so that those involved could continue to help throughout the years, I thought about selling something related to food because I love cooking. In Hong Kong, which is where I live, the herb basil is fairly expensive, so even though I would often want to use it, I tended to not have basil at home. This sparked an idea to sell basil herbs in Hong Kong. Immediately, I picked up my phone and started to call every friend I knew to ask for a small section of their balconies to be used as land for growing basil plants. I even approached our school to borrow any land that was available on campus. However, considering how compact Hong Kong is, I was unsuccessful in acquiring land. Some of my friends did not even have balconies. So back at home with my tiny balcony, I started covering the floor with basil plant pots and tried growing the basil herbs with the hope of selling them at the upcoming school fairs. However, suddenly the pandemic hit, so I tried looking for ways to sell them online to Hong Kong residents. But then there was another challenge. I realized that no post office would allow me to ship basil pots, not to mention the heavy postage fee that would come. Thus, as there were too many challenges to selling such herbs, ultimately, this plan did not come to fruition. Consequently, I thought very hard about what to sell to raise funds. I didn't want to sell baked goods like everyone at my school for fundraising. One day, as I was using the pepper grinder to add some spice to my fried rice, I suddenly thought about selling peppers. As I was grinding the peppers to my rice, I realized that peppers had a very long expiration date and were easy to ship. It would be perfect. In this way, my nonprofit organization called 4Girls was born from the kitchen. The primary objective of 4Girls is to raise funds and awareness to help those affected by period poverty. After many weeks of thorough research and communication with farms in Cambodia, I opened my first ever online store on Etsy. The joy of sharing my Etsy store with my friends, families, and those around me soon ended, however. One day, I was woken by the most heartbreaking email that my Etsy store had shut down because the manager of my pepper store, which was me, was underage. At the time, I didn't realize there was an age requirement for an Etsy store. As you can see, throughout the years, I failed on multiple occasions and had numerous challenges. In the beginning, I also was not sure how much I could make a difference. But my conversations with different people, running our school's first period product drive, and selling Cambodia's local specialties in Hong Kong to help girls in Cambodia made me realize that period poverty was part of a larger issue. I believe it was the failures during the process that allowed me to understand an extremely important and powerful tool that we all can use. I realized that what I was searching for was always within me, the courage to speak out. Even if we start small, we, as individuals, have the power to create change. With the funds I've raised for the past 3 years, I was able to help contribute to the construction of one bathroom at a school in rural Cambodia. Although my start in this journey is small, I believe that the end goal will be very meaningful. This is also why the logo of the 4Girls organization is a heart with a pad in the center. Living in Asia, I've learned that periods are often seen as something that brings up feelings of shyness or shame. I hope that the logo of a heart with a pad will express both my positive feelings and a sense of acknowledgement for other girls and women. In the changing world of social media, I also realized the power of social media and how posts from our account could spread to so many different people. Overall, I believe that there are 3 layers to helping the girls. First, directly helping the girls. Second, involving those around me to lend their support. Third, which is my current goal, to use my pepper shop as a platform for those girls in Cambodia to sell their handmade products in Hong Kong. Period poverty is not just a women's issue. Through my work in the 4Girls organization, I realized that issues of period poverty and period stigma go hand in hand. For many, this problem was unspoken and uncomfortable to talk about. In other cases, people didn't know what period poverty was. With the media shining light on critical issues like the pandemic or climate change, period poverty, an important issue, drops down to the bottom of the list. Thus, while it's important to help girls and women financially, it's at least as important, if not more important, to use our voice during such times. Remember that every action matters. If we all take action, we can live in the world of hope. Real change is happening today, but there's still so much more to be done. In a world with complete menstrual equity, a natural bodily process would never prevent someone from reaching their full potential. Together, we can all work to end this crisis. We can stop robbing girls of their education. But in the larger context, this is also a matter of human dignity. Menstrual justice is connected to the larger fight for economic justice. Girls' health and education form the cornerstone of economic development of a country. In the process of the changing world of work, I dream of a day when girls are empowered to go to school and women are empowered to go to work without fear or challenges because of their periods. A natural need should not be a barrier to anyone's education or economic potential, and nobody should have to make the decision between two necessities. If I can help just one person improve their life, I believe this journey has been worth it. I ask you to not be a bystander, but a supporter. I ask you to not be shy, but to speak out. I ask you to use your voice to call out period poverty, call out the inequities that girls are facing every day. Call out to those around you by recognizing the issue and having these conversations. For me, my conversation was born from the spark of anger, empathy, love, and a touch of pepper from the kitchen. Where will your voice start? Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Yoonjung, for bringing our attention to menstrual inequalities and its impact on women and girls' financial future. I realize that I take my own access to pads and tampons for granted, and I never really thought how a lack of access to period products has held other women back. The fact that you took this insight and sprang into action, overcoming many obstacles along the way, has inspired myself, and I'm sure many of us here tonight. Thanks for your candor and sharing your own journey, and your courage to speak up about period poverty, and of course, your efforts to invest in girls and their future. We've heard loud and clear that financial strength comes after basic needs are met, and education is key to a woman's success. Let's dig deeper into this concept of basic needs with Dr. Christina Hallett. Dr. Hallett is a board-certified clinical psychologist, TEDx speaker, and associate professor of psychology at Bay Path University, with over 25 years of experience working with organizations and individuals. She is the author of 3 international bestsellers, host of a popular podcast, and is frequently featured on national platforms, speaking on productivity, resilience, communication, self-care, harnessing the power of stress, and living your best life. Welcome, Dr. Hallett. We're thrilled you're here with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and welcome to all of you. COVID-19, a global pandemic. No matter where you live, COVID has touched your community and your life. We've all been adrift on the waters of an unfamiliar experience, and the negative effects on stress and daily living have been universal. One of the most common phrases has been, "We're all in this together." And to some degree, that's true. No one's been isolated from impact, whether related to work, health, or daily living. What's not true? We don't all have the same resources to pull from. If we conceptualize a global pandemic as an ocean, we must acknowledge that we're not in the same boat. Our ability to navigate those waters has been mitigated or worsened by a variety of factors, including financial, gender, race, living situation, health, and genetics. In fact, while some of us have sailed through COVID on the equivalent of a large yacht, others of our global sisters and brothers have barely had a log to hold on to. Financial status has been a main determinant in how people have survived through the pandemic. Those with significant financial reserves have been able to maintain a stable manner of living, while those lacking financial resources have fared far worse. Using our boat analogy, economic empowerment has been a motor or a driving force in the ability to survive the pandemic and other stressors. These differences are visible and apparent, as are the associated economic and health impacts. But there's another often invisible factor at play. When we think about survival resources, the fuel to power our boat or the sail to navigate our ship, we must acknowledge the level of our mental health and well-being. While many individuals have experienced some impact of the pandemic on their mental health, those with mental health disorders have been disproportionately impacted during this crisis. Mental health and well-being is the factor which determines the strength of our ability to manage and negotiate crises and stressful situations. Studies have clearly shown that mental health disorders and treatment needs increase after any kind of disaster. The situation's more complex, however, for those individuals experiencing mental health issues or disability. These individuals have a mortality rate post-disaster that's between 2 to 4 times higher than those without mental illness. Without question, women and youth are already under-resourced, and the impact of mental health challenges only increases that disparity. There's no question, this is a big problem. Our best functioning, both as individuals and as a society, is dependent on our overall well-being and mental health. We can't function at our highest capacity without also achieving a state of mental health. And in accordance with the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we need to prioritize mental health and well-being across all people. Now consider data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which suggests that about 50% of people in the world will experience some sort of mental health issue in their lifetime. The annual rate of death by suicide is about 800,000 people per year. That's larger than the amount of people who die from war or murder. We all know and love, or are, people with mental health concerns. Mental health is an issue that impacts everyone and that we should all be invested in addressing. Mental health is also a financial imperative. The costs of mental ill health come to more than 4% of global GDP, which that's more than the combined total costs of chronic respiratory diseases, diabetes, and cancer combined. As a global society, we're already spending millions of dollars per year on costs related to mental health needs. And it's estimated that by 2030, this number will exceed $6 trillion a year. Although there's clearly variations related to cultural and socioeconomic characteristics, we know there's a gender-based income gap. We know that the overall percentage of youth under 18 who are living in poverty is incredibly high. Women and youth from disadvantaged or minority backgrounds have significantly lower access to healthcare and quality of care. Given all these factors, women and youth, especially from marginalized or under-resourced backgrounds, are disproportionately experiencing the negative impact of mental illness. And that's before we weave in the societal implications of mental ill health. Think for a moment about your personal thoughts and feelings regarding the topic, the idea of mental health. Some of us are comfortable and confident in discussing issues related to emotional functioning. Others of us throughout the world think of mental health as a taboo topic or attach an automatic negative connotation to any suggestion of mental struggle or disorder. There are many who believe that mental disorders are a sign of weakness or personal lack. This is due to the impact of stigma. We've made some gains. There's been a slight shift in language from mental illness to mental health. Although there's been progress, internalized bias and stigma within our families, our communities, and ourselves is still very common. So what better place to discuss well-being and mental health than a conference on building financial strength for under-resourced women and youth with a focus on promoting gender equality, economic empowerment, and justice. We need to recognize the universality of mental health challenges and give voice to our collective agreement to making changes. This affects us all. I'd like to give you a sense of specific numbers. In the United States, 2020 data indicates that 52.9 million people, that's 1 in 5 adults, experienced a mental health problem. In the same year, there were 7.7 million youth between the ages of 6 to 17 years old who were struggling with mental health. There's a wide range of mental health disorders, and the top two are anxiety at about 19% and depression at 9%. In China, the World Health Organization reports that depression and anxiety are the two most common mental health disorders, with an estimated 54 million people experiencing depression and about 41 million experiencing an anxiety disorder. Rates of mental ill health are similar across the globe, all of which has been worsened by the effects of the pandemic, as well as other natural disasters. The answer to solving this is complicated, and it's far bigger than any one of us individually. But there are answers. We need governments, corporations, and communities to take responsibility for dismantling the institutions that perpetuate health and mental health disparities for women and youth. And there are concrete, immediate steps that each of us can work toward, and that involves building resilience and decreasing stigma on the individual, community, and governmental level. Often, people think of resilience as a type of elasticity, a bouncing back after adversity. The UN Common Guidance on Helping Build Resilient Societies has a long definition of resilience, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. They define resilience as the ability of individuals, households, communities, cities, institutions, systems, and societies to prevent, resist, absorb, adapt, respond, and recover positively, efficiently, and effectively when faced with a wide range of risks, while maintaining an acceptable level of functioning without compromising long-term prospects for sustainable development, peace and security, human rights, and well-being for all. From a psychological perspective, this refers to mental and emotional coping skills to handle difficulties and crises. It's important to recognize there's a mischaracterization in this description. What we go through changes us. So we're not really bouncing back to a pre-crisis level of functioning. Instead, our goal is to grow through the difficulties and to begin to incorporate the lessons we've learned through our experiences. Instead of bouncing back like an elastic, we need to see ourselves as bouncing forward with a broader perspective and greater knowledge. We need to understand that resilience is a skill that we can and need to develop for ourselves, our communities, and our world. Preparing ourselves to gain resilience skills is equivalent to depositing money in a bank. As we focus on learning and adapting to methods of self-care and decreasing stigma, we're increasing our reserve, or the resource, of psychological health and well-being. We need to start by developing mental health literacy. Mental health literacy includes awareness and knowledge of mental health difficulties, learning best practices for prevention and how to access resources, and developing the means to support both ourselves and others who may be having mental health problems. Using our COVID ocean analogy, learning and implementing resilience skills is equivalent to building a more watertight boat so that we can better navigate difficulties. An example of a governmental approach to resilience is the implementation of the child tax credit in the United States during COVID. This measure brought millions of children out of poverty that had been worsened by the pandemic and allowed for the provision of basic needs, such as housing, medical treatment, and food. While not directly geared at mental health, supporting first-line health and needs has a collateral positive impact on well-being. In the same way that mental health is a fundamental building block of resilience, a minimal level of financial stability is necessary to support optimal mental health. Another governmental approach is the National Campaign for Suicide Awareness and Prevention that's been rolled out in 38 countries. The WHO continues to push for all countries to join in this fight by enacting measures such as responsible media reporting of deaths by suicide, implementing programs geared towards youth developing relevant life skills, and banning pesticides, which is a common method of death by suicide in low and middle income countries. On the community level, local organizations can partner to share information on mental health first aid. This is a frontline approach to reducing stigma by encouraging awareness, connection, and open conversation to facilitate self-help, social, and professional supports. Mental health first aid starts with asking the question, how are you really? It's a willingness to engage in conversation while listening non-judgmentally to someone's experience. Having knowledge of the signs of mental health disorders and resources available allows you to offer support, information, and encouragement. Simply opening a conversation about mental health and wellness is a vital action towards decreasing stigma and beginning the process of developing resilience skills. Other community level actions include expanding social supports through outreach to members of the community, such as actively inviting people to join a parent, church, or other group, as well as encouraging youth to engage in community-based activities like sports or clubs. Having close relationships and feeling valued by others is a strong preventative resilience strategy and increases a sense of well-being. In a similar fashion, engaging in community-level acts of kindness and giving improves well-being and overall life satisfaction for all of us. At the individual level, there's a variety of strategies that build the foundation of strong resilience skills. Imagine you're building a house. That first step is to create the foundation upon which you'll build the house. Eating as well as possible, getting adequate sleep, moving your body, and using your breath as an active stress management technique forms a solid foundation of resilience. While eating, sleeping, and movement are self-explanatory in terms of impact, we often overlook the most available and accessible strategy, working with our own body to reduce the impact of stress or distress. Your emotions, your physical reactions, and to an extent your thoughts are impacted by an area of your brain called the limbic system. When there's a perceived threat or stressor, your amygdala, part of the limbic system, gets activated. It goes on a high alert status, which has a cascading effect on your body. This generates what we often call the fight, flight, freeze response. Your brain prepares your body to deal with the potential threat by releasing a variety of neurotransmitters and neurohormones that allow you to best manage the stressor. However, when this is happening, you're less able to think clearly and make decisions. In effect, your ability to manage stress decreases. By using your breath, you can decrease the activation of your amygdala and return to active decision-making to deal with and address the stress you're facing. Let's practice right now. What I'd like you to do is take in a deep breath from the bottom of your belly, inhaling 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath, 2, 3, 4. Slowly release, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. This particular breathing method counteracts your instinctive stress response and is both a preventative resilience technique and an active stress management coping skill. Staying with our analogy of a house, the rest of the house is built by using these skills. engaging in activities that you enjoy and that give you a sense of achievement and purpose, setting small goals and acknowledging when you achieve them, learning and practicing meditation and relaxation, sharing with people close to you how you're feeling and talking things over. Time outdoors, especially in nature, has a significant positive impact on coping and resilience. Increasing resilience, promoting mental health and well-being, and reducing stigma are inextricably entwined on all levels. While individuals ultimately need to incorporate and utilize resilience skills, the process can and must be supported and enhanced on the community and national level as a systemic intervention. An example from Syria shows us a systemic approach to building resilience. The average rate of mental health issues in Syria is about 1 in 10 people. The prevalence of ongoing in-country conflict, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, has taken an enormous toll on the mental well-being of people in Syria, similar to the rest of the world. The WHO Syria worked with local organizations to disseminate a campaign focused on reducing anxiety and fear in children related to COVID, as well as supporting parents' ability to speak openly with their children about issues of mental health and well-being. The campaign provided support sessions, parent, caregiver, and provider-focused discussions, and it used this coloring book. It was a story called My Hero Is You that was developed by a UN Committee on Mental Health and Psychosocial Support, specifically to teach coping mechanisms and strategies for dealing with stress. In this example, stigma was decreased through the multi-level acknowledgement of mental ill health and the need for coping skills. Resilience was promoted through connections to others, engagement of individuals, families, and communities, and the availability of resources. By recognizing the importance of mental health and instituting resources to directly address the issue, youth, parents, and caregivers were able to gain important resilience tools. In other words, Syria worked to build a more seaworthy boat and began the process of stocking necessary supplies and resources to decrease the negative mental health effects of COVID, as well as improve ongoing overall functioning. The COVID-19 pandemic is just one example of the natural disasters and global stressors that have presented enormous challenges to individuals, communities, and governments. These challenges further exacerbate longstanding gender, age, racial, and socioeconomic disparities. The possible consequences of these challenges are significant and profound, as are the possibilities. In dealing with the pandemic, individuals, communities, and governments have also had the opportunity to build resilience and to begin to decrease stigma. We've started the process of building a boat, the boat of mental health and well-being that benefits everyone. Through the cultivation of individual resilience skills, community resilience practices, and government-sponsored resilience interventions, we have the potential to promote gender equality, economic empowerment, and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hallett. From periods to mental health, we certainly have touched on what some may consider to be taboo topics, but it's clear that addressing these universal human needs is really core to allowing women to function at their highest capacity. Certainly as Omicron wanes, may we all now work on waterproofing not only our own boats, but the boats of those around us, and to take the time to stop and ask our neighbors, how are you really? Thank you for sharing things we can do as individuals and as people part of organizations to increase resilience, promote mental health and well-being, and reduce stigma. Next up, we have Jasmine Ma. Jasmine is a student at Basis International School, Shenzhen, and advocates for children, youth, and girls' rights through academic research and social engagements. She is passionate about speech and debate, and you'll soon see why she has won several national awards in the past. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you, Caroline. As a young woman of the 21st century, I feel fortunate that I've been born to a society of relative equality between two genders. Yet as I grow to gain a more comprehensive understanding of society, it's been increasingly obvious that there remains a long way for gender equality to go. Financial strength, especially, is lacking for many women and youth around the globe. My speech today will focus on 3 possible resolutions to the existing issue, those being a broader acceptance and definition for the women's role at home, the building of a support system for a more flexible work arrangement, and the enhancing of government policies to reflect these changes. In order to better and more accurately address the issue of financial strength, we must first define the idea of under-resourced women and youth. What is it that makes a certain group more marginalized and vulnerable than others? According to United Nations Industrial Development Organization, although women and youth are not a homogeneous group, and their circumstances vary according to age, class, education, ethnicity, location, and other cultural and socioeconomic characteristics, it is widely acknowledged that women and youth bear a disproportionate burden of global poverty. The extent of this global poverty greatly contributes to the underrepresentation in many sectors of society, thereby trapping them within a cycle where equal financial rights and freedom seem unattainable. In fact, women remain greatly underrepresented in investment businesses, both as beneficiaries and as decision makers. In 2018, over 90% of capital raised by tech companies backed by European venture capital went to teams that didn't have a single female founder. Without such representation, financial independence of women can hardly be achieved. This increases the likelihood that women will be dependent on the income and therefore the control of males present in their lives, whether that be their father or husband. Without addressing the issue of underrepresentation, the financial rights of women will never be realized, as they will never be presented with the same opportunities and chances as male counterparts. Let's take a look at some data that quantify this difference in opportunities and privilege. Around the world, the contrast of gender equality across different regions is notable, and we'll look at the example of China in particular. In this nation, as expected, gender disparity continues to be much higher in rural areas, with some of this attributed to poor education. According to the 2020 report from the South China Morning Post, the average length of education in rural areas is only 7.3 years for girls, compared to 8.1 years for boys. Moreover, a 2016 report by the country's social welfare organization found that while 90% of rural girls have enrolled in primary education, only 79% moved on to secondary levels. As a result of this lack of education, which was even more prominent in earlier decades, about 57% of senior women live supported by their family members, compared with only 35% for senior men. The lack of education greatly reduces the opportunity for women to gain independence from their birth families. And unfortunately, this insufficiency created early on may last for a lifetime. Across the globe, the effects of gender equality disproportionately affect the developing countries with relatively low income. According to the World Bank, 21 out of the 189 surveyed economies received a score of 0 in the Protecting Women from Violence indicator. Many of these economies are located in sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and North Africa. Economies that performed well in the survey included countries like the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and other high-income countries from the Organization for the Economic Cooperation and Development. The results of this survey demonstrate a strong correlation between the protection of women's rights and the strength of the economy. We must also acknowledge, however, that this is a process, as no national economy can grow to its fullest potential without equal participation from both genders. The solution for the root cause of this issue, therefore, continues to lie in the empowerment of women, specifically the ability for women to grow and contribute to the economy equally, thereby granting women the ability to fulfill personal potential with minimal obstacles from the gender-oriented society. In order to achieve this, women must be able to support themselves with minimal economic dependence on the men around them. Women need to possess financial strength. To best support increased female financial strength, we must identify the causes which contribute to the larger issue, including different social expectations, personal perceptions, and government regulations. Female entrepreneurship and employment are often discouraged. According to the Harvard Business Review, the difference between male and female entrepreneurship is often attributed to differing levels of human capital, social capital, and growth aspirations across the genders. The lack of human capital and growth aspirations may also be related to the unconscious bias, women being perceived and perceiving themselves as having less entrepreneurial experience and potential than men. This unseen societal bias effectively limits the number of female pioneer entrepreneurs from the very beginning. The lack of social capital can be attributed to the smaller and less diverse networks that are accessible to women. Investors, likewise, ask different questions to male and female founders, evaluate them according to different criteria, and in general prefer pitches presented by male entrepreneurs, even when the content is exactly the same. The very chance of entrepreneurship, an important potential source of financial independence, is subsequently removed from women before it can even start. The policies of society similarly rarely work in favor of promoting female rights. The decision and policymakers in government are almost always exclusively male, making it difficult for women to gain power. At a national congress of the East Asian country, for example, less than a quarter of the delegates were female. Such a phenomenon is widespread across the globe, hindering the development of female financial empowerment. There are some solutions to address these issues on both the societal and local levels. The Industrial Development Organization, for example, is actively cooperating with different countries to promote gender equality through increasing opportunities for both girls and boys. It concentrates on an enabling environment for female entrepreneurs and support for youth entrepreneurship to help strengthen financial rights for the two marginalized groups. The UN Women's Strategic Plan, likewise, includes 3 thematic pillars: the leadership of young women in all disciplines, economic empowerment and skills development of young women, and actions on ending violence against young women and girls. All 3 categories are crucial regarding the empowerment of women, and specifically, female financial strength. As women have more access to leadership roles, not only will they become more willing to take on new economic ventures, it is likely that they will become less passive within the household as well. The consequent approach is strengthening participation, voice, and partnerships with young women and young women-led organizations will provide further support for the development of female financial rights as the projects receive more attention and funding. National governments in developing countries as well have taken measures in recent years to promote gender equality and female financial rights. Between 2016 and 18, Ecuador equalized men's and women's property rights by no longer allowing a husband's decision to prevail when spouses disagree on how to administer assets. While this may seem like a small and even late step taken by the government, it is nevertheless indicative of positive attention being paid to the importance of female financial empowerment. This is the beginning step towards granting legal protection of women's financial and property rights, and a vital step towards supporting women to make personal decisions without the overshadowing influence of their husbands. It is a step towards the economic inclusion of women. And fortunately, This is not a standalone example. Iraq, around the same time, amended its new labor code so that it prohibits discrimination based on gender. Similarly, a handful of countries from Central and East Africa implemented 34 reforms in the area of building financial credit for women. This has been a weak point around the world, including high-income developed countries, demonstrating the superior advancements that developing countries are striving to make in order to secure and protect female financial rights. Local governments, too, have taken steps to promote female financial strength. The International Financial Cooperation has been working closely with the Bank of Deyang in China to help extend services to small and medium enterprises and support women-owned businesses in areas affected by the 2008 earthquake. The bank itself has also launched a microloan program for women, which has dispersed $2 million to 322 women entrepreneurs, granting more than 1,000 jobs. All these actions strongly reinforce the goal of female financial independence. By supporting women-owned businesses adversely affected by natural catastrophes, women can access increased opportunities for self-sufficiency after trauma, so that the increased vulnerability will not increase their dependence on male members around them. Additionally, the creation of jobs in companies run by women entrepreneurs is a direct step towards the overall betterment of female financial strength. As presently, the employment of women in companies headed by male entrepreneurs tend to face different scrutiny and expectations upon entry. With the rise of female-led companies, however, this phenomenon ought to be gradually eliminated. As a young female leader, I believe that there are more steps we can take to ensure female financial strength. In addition to government interventions, we must also address the root cause for the imbalance of gender perceptions, the people who unwittingly maintain this impression. To permanently solve this issue, we must begin to change the values and expectations of children as they're growing up, including young men. The perception that men should be the ones working or have the burden of financially supporting the family must be overcome. Instead, we as a society should teach that both genders have equal and interchangeable roles. Men can stay home as well as women, while women should also be expected to be given the same employment opportunities in the industry. It is key to move past the gender norms that have for so long shaped society. Although there has been some improvement over the past few decades, this remains an issue that needs to be highlighted, and I believe that it should be addressed at a young age. Concurrently, we also need to build necessary support systems for women. According to Annuity, 1 in 5 women falls into poverty because of divorce, and 3 out of 4 divorced mothers do not receive full payment of child support. This is just one example of how women can be negatively affected by the unpredictable and inevitable circumstances of life without an infrastructure of support. In the face of such a glaring issue, we need to create models of flexible arrangement that are uniquely tailored to the population's needs, a stable source of income, and flexible time arrangement for the caring of children. This doesn't have to be the sole model of entrepreneurship and leadership, as it would be inefficient and not necessarily utilized to its full extent. However, focusing on smaller business models may allow us to explore the best of women's potentials and opportunities with a specific skill. An example of this is women-led weaving industries in the developing countries. While it may be argued that such work models are perhaps too unstructured to be valued, this ties back to the larger narrative of altering social perception. Suiting the needs of a specific population ultimately further empowers female financial independence, as women will be working to the fullest of their abilities to support both themselves and their families without having to rely on outside sources of income. This is a stable and self-controlled mode of support, with a built-in flexibility that reinforces the model. This model is not something to be looked down upon and should not be something to be looked down upon, as there should be no definition of what is more acceptable than another. The ultimate goal is to empower each individual in a unique way that is suited to their needs and abilities. Last but not least, we should continue to push for more government policies that address the situation of women. Perhaps the first step towards this is to expand the presence of women in the government-making body so that the fate and rights of women can be held in our own hands, and so that our voice can be heard in the writing and implementation of policies. Society has come a long way over the past centuries regarding the issue of female empowerment. Yet the specific topic of female financial strength remains unnebulous and unsolved. While there are increasing government policies and social organizations that aim to provide support and authority for women over such issues, more steps can be taken in the future. I believe that the core of this issue lies in changing social perception, broadening the social definition of gender expectations to be more accepting, starting at a young age. At the same time, we must create the necessary infrastructure to accommodate the specific needs of women in vulnerable positions to guarantee that there are sufficient opportunities for economic independence, even under less ideal circumstances. Lastly, we must continue to urge for more governmental policies regarding female financial empowerment, the legal protection needed for this issue to be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine, for sharing your observations and research with us, bringing greater awareness to some of the underlying factors that contribute to gender inequality. You touched on a very important one, unconscious bias, and I love your suggestion that we can change the imbalance of gender perceptions if we address it with kids early and often. Last but not least, I am honored to introduce Yinjun Zheng, who is the director of China Youth AIDS Prevention Education Project Office and chairman of Beijing Change Your Education Foundation.
The importance of women's economic empowerment, globalization, and technological progress have brought great development space for women. But many remain trapped in economic environment with no social protection and no or even no income. The World Women 2020 trends and statistics shows less than 50% of working-age women in the labor market, a figure that has barely changed over the last quarter of a century. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated inequalities in society and posed great challenges for women and girls. According to the report on the UN Women Global Response to COVID-19 released by the United Nations Entities for Gender Equality and the Improvement of Women in 2021, despite making up just 39% of global employment, women account for 54% of job losses. They are more vulnerable to job loss, pay cuts, and school dropout. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made them more vulnerable to inequality, social protection, and remedies. Gender equality, listed as Goal 5 in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, aims to empower women and girls worldwide to access education, healthcare, decent work, and participation in political and economic decision-making. This is crucial to achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Nothing can be achieved without the full participation of women, including such issues as tackling climate change, ending AIDS, promoting sustainable development, and preventing and resolving conflicts. To change the status of women worldwide, they must be guaranteed to become independent economic individual. Improvement of the status of women will bring about the increase of women's labor force participation rate and social participation rate. It will be conducive not only to social and economic development at the macro level, but also to the improvement of women's individual quality and comprehensive development at the macro level. In addition, it will help to enhance family development capacity, improve the health of family members, increase investment in children's education, and eliminate the intergenerational transmission of poverty. Therefore, we appeal to the international community to create a different working environment for women so that they can obtain more opportunities, rights, and interest at work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our amazing speakers and translators. We now have about 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to type it in the chat or use the raise hand function to come off mute.
Okay, so this is Emma. If you have any questions, Ming, do you mind to just get the last page of contact information on the screen? So I want to make sure that if any organizations or any representative from any organization. Yes. So yeah, you can take down this and take a picture. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us. Okay, Caroline, over to you. Thank you.
Okay. If there aren't any immediate questions, like Emma mentioned, feel free to reach out after this parallel event, and we will happily take them. Thank you so much for joining tonight's event, sponsored by Beijing Change Your Education Foundation. We hope that you've come away from this event better inspired and equipped to make a difference for women and youth in your communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great presentation.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.